Dear subscribers, as you know, we shared many information for you, and we are studying very hard to find current news for you. However, I cannot use this channel for future. Please follow our new channel called as Daily News Report and watch our video to support us. Link in description. Also, you can reach the video we shared on Daily News Report by clicking on the top right button. We highly recommend watching, subscribing, and sharing. We will continue to share some news on this channel, but we take precautions against some situations for future. Thank you for supporting us.
I posted that video a few days ago. We've had some pretty strong up days, and we're probably going to have some pretty big down days as well. So we're going to see the market chop around. Now, overall, cycle analysis has most of these markets testing resistance level. You look at the SP 500, the US markets in general, they're all trading under the 50-day moving average. They're trading under previous highs from several weeks ago. So the stock market's kind of bounced and is pushing up into resistance this week. And then when we look at some of the safe havens, you look at bonds, and I wouldn't say metals are so much a safe haven, but if you look at metals, they've all broken down and they're forming a bearish pattern too. So overall, it seems to be there's some money rotating out of this market, and it looks like it's kind of preparing for some big volatility down the road. Now, we can see that in a few different asset classes, like the US dollar has started an uptrend. The dollar typically rallies when there's fear in the market, and when the stock market starts to crash, the dollar rallies. So that's one kind of early warning sign that the markets participants are starting to liquidate some positions and just move to their favored currency.
Yeah, great point. How do you think that the US election might affect markets both before and after the result?
Yeah, it's a real crapshoot. I mean, no one really, I think, knows what's going to happen. Obviously, predicting the future is pretty darn tough, but there's no doubt we're going to probably see some big waves of buying and selling. I mean, when a stimulus plan gets passed, we're probably going to see a big wave of buying that could last for several days. I think a lot of people are kind of waiting there. When a stimulus plan gets issued, I think it's also going to be good for precious metals because it means there's going to be more printing, more devaluing long-term of the currency. Who knows? I mean, that first debate, I mean, it was pretty wild. It was uncomfortable to watch. And it just so shows the type of uncertainty we're walking into. And typically, if there's a new president or even just any re-election, we're going to see some huge price swings. Whether there's confidence or lack of confidence, we're not going to know until the stock market tells us after the election date. So,
yeah. I mean, I don't think they were acting all that presidential, but anyway, who am I to say? Let's mention the US dollar. So, do you think the US dollar is going to move higher in late 2020 or 2021? What are your thoughts?
I kind of think it does. I mean, it goes against the trend with a lot of people's thinking, and that's what the markets like to do. They go against the masses. I mean, stimulus plan means more printing, and that means devaluation of the currency. But the thing is, if we've got chaos in the markets and people start liquidating positions, they're going to move around the world. Doesn't matter what country you're in. A lot of people move to the US dollar, which is why it rallies during a time of uncertainty and other currencies fall. So even though it's getting printed or devalued, I mean, it's not going to lose its value. I think it's actually going to rally and become, cash is king. I think last time I talked about how cash was king during the market crash in March. The dollar rallied 12%, and I think it could be again. Warren Buffett's saying the same thing. That cash is not a bad thing. He doesn't like it. Doesn't like gold either, but he's buying cash and stocking up on some gold because we're getting into some uncertain times where there aren't any better options but to move aside.
Yeah, and on that, you're known as the gold and oil guy. Let's talk about precious metals first. You said back in July that we are still a few months away from the breakout. So is gold still in an upward trend? Where do you see it heading in the next year? And what are the technicals showing us right now?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a real roller coaster ride on metals when you look forward one full year. I think the last time we spoke, that was the day the markets were putting in a top for gold. It was an upside price target that we had expected price to find resistance, and we're trading lower from there. And we're seeing the same with gold, silver miners across the board. So I think we're going to see them firm up and perform better over the next, maybe the next month going to the elections. I think uncertainty is going to help lift gold. But when and if the stock market does correct and it kind of gets a reality check of the strength of the economy, eventually the stock market should kind of catch up with how kind of rough things really are. Then we're going to see metals and miners all sell off. And I think there'll be a big dip between now and this time, potentially next year. But this time next year could be an incredible opportunity where they've finally been kind of washed out and the selling in the market is dissipated. And then they can rally just like they did in 2009, really. They got washed out with the stock market and then they bottomed. They should be the first to bottom and rally. So I think there'll be much lower prices from here longer term before the markets put in a real bottom.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you say that because I was watching a video about the price targets for silver, etc., and how to anticipate the future based on what's happened before. I know it's always difficult. In your head, or kind of because you've been doing this for such a long time, I'd be curious to learn what do you think some of the longer term targets for gold are, and when do you see those playing out?
Yeah, so depending how things play out, if things get ugly, I mean, my kind of more reasonable targets are 2,600 and 3,400 for gold. But if all hell breaks loose and there's much more stimulus and a lot of things breaking down globally in a lot of countries, then I think the most extreme forecast that I can get based off the charts is around $7,500, $7,700 an ounce for gold. So there's a lot of upside, but that will be a really tough world we're living in. I mean, who knows what it'll be like, but it won't be fun, put it that way. So
sure.
That's the upside target. And really, I don't want it to get there. I'd rather not.
Yeah. Great points, thank you. With all of the choices out there, I know that it varies so much from country to country and every investor is different, but are there any mining companies with long-term appeal, perhaps one or two names that you like?
I don't really get into picking individual stocks. I kind of like the basket and I don't really go into individual stocks, but if you're to pick one, I think you kind of want something that is a high cost producer. So it'd be a smaller company. It costs them a fortune to get out of the ground, which means they have really no profits or barely any profits right now. And then when gold goes up, that's when you get a lot more leverage out of those little companies versus, like a Barrick Gold who's got very efficient to get it out of the ground. So when gold goes up, it actually doesn't jack up their profit margins dramatically.
Maybe that's why some people look to the junior miners. Thank you. So talking again about the analysis of silver's price action, because you mentioned that in one of your recent videos, would you say that the recent correction in silver is perhaps the final low that we might see in the metal before it breaks out? Where do you think it's going to move in the short term, medium term?
Yeah, I think we're going to see lower silver. Like looking forward 6-8 months from now, silver could be trading lower. But I do feel like it's going to start to bottom here, or it is bottoming, and it's going to rally going into the elections. And maybe just after the elections, it might push to some newer highs. Maybe $34 for silver is the next upside.
Does that depend? Would that be if Trump wins, or does it really make no difference who wins?
I don't really know. I don't know how everyone's going to perceive whoever wins, what they're going to do. But I just see uncertainty is going to send, and fiscal stimulus is going to send silver and gold higher naturally. So,
excellent point. Do you think that, I know that we've mentioned this before on this program, but say taking the predictions out to a broader time horizon at least a year, maybe 1 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Do you think there's even more upside potential for silver during that time?
I do. Yeah, percentage wise, silver should really dwarf the gains on gold. I mean, if gold was to go to 6,000, it's only up 200% from where it is right now. Or if silver goes to 50, 80, 120, I mean, we're talking massive returns on silver. So I do like silver. I'm heavier weighted in silver. I'm probably about 65% silver and the balance in gold for my reserves. Just because I like the upside potential of silver. But I mean, I still think you need to own a good chunk of gold. I know a lot of people just stack silver. They might have the odd gold bar or round or something. But the thing is, gold is still the core asset seen globally as a currency. And it's the one that broke out a year before silver. It broke out a year before gold miners because the world sees it as a currency. So you've definitely got to have that because you never know which metal is actually going to take off. Generally, we see gold miners go first, and here it was big old boring gold broke out a year before. So for all we know, gold goes ballistic as the global reserve kind of asset, and silver underperforms. So you definitely need a mixed portfolio.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think governments certainly agree with that, with them repatriating all their tons of gold everywhere. So oil now, do you see crude oil futures dropping?
I do. It's more or less in a downtrend right now. It's had a big run from March, but it had a big reversal to the downside about a month ago. I mean, I think there's 3 years worth of reserves stored in every barrel and tank in the underground. I mean, there's so much, and we're looking at just lack of transportation. It's just not going to get used up, and companies are still pumping it out. And you look at how bad the economy is. I mean, the energy companies are looking to lay off. I think Shell or BP's like laying off 9,000, Disney 28,000.
Wow.
There's another big one out this morning. I think it was one of the airlines looking at to lay off 28,000 as well or something. I mean, we're just kind of at the tip of the iceberg of a lot higher unemployment rate, I think.
Yeah, and far more than perhaps many people anticipated even a few months ago. It seems to really be getting quite drastic right now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Bitcoin quickly, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
It's been trending upwards since April. Will that last?
We're probably going to see it pull back with the stock market. Right now, I got a downside target around 8,900 or the $9,000 mark for Bitcoin. It's forming a little bit of a technical bear flag, which is a negative pattern. And really, the pattern is showing that over the next month, we'll probably fall to that $9,000 level. So I'm a little bearish on it short term. I think it's definitely a wild card in what's going to happen with fiscal stimulus. I mean, we've also got potential legislation coming down that's going to want to ban Bitcoin to be used in the States. There's all kinds of things that are coming together that make it not a hot commodity for at least the American holders, right? At this point, it's a little bit bearish. And I mean, if it was to get banned in the States, we'd probably see Bitcoin crash really hard. Because I mean, who doesn't want to use Bitcoin to do transactions the government can't see? You can buy and sell stuff without paying taxes. I mean, it's the perfect kind of counterfeit way to get around stuff like that.
That's really interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Because I suppose it would make sense if they banned it if they're going to roll out their Fed coin. But I guess we'll see what happens. Thank you. Those are great points. So if there's someone watching right now who just wants a few actionable steps to help them make it through the next 6 months or so, do you have any tips for them? Let's say somebody who's relatively new to investing, for instance.
Yeah, to be honest, if you're an investor, kind of somebody who wants to put money to work and let it do its thing over a long period of time, I don't really think you should be stepping into this market. I think you should sit there with your cash and let this chaos, let the elections, let the stimulus and COVID kind of start to work itself over the next few months. Get a feeling for what the stock market, the economy is doing, because right now we're walking into a season where cold weather can spread COVID. We're coming into elections, stimulus plan about to come out, whether it's 2.2 or 1.5 or 4 trillion, who knows? You're really walking into a landmine. And there's going to be a huge value swing in your account. Either way, we don't know. And do you really want to risk hard-earned money that you spent months or years saving up to put it into the market when it's full of landmines, right? So I'd sit back, enjoy watching the markets and the volatility and try and get a feel for things. But I'd probably look back in January and try and get a gauge on what to do.
That's really helpful advice, I think, because I think too often people want easy gains, whereas in actual fact, cash preservation is critical. And that's why perhaps a lot of people are investing in precious metals, at least to preserve their capital, even if they're not sure about what's going to happen with the stock market. Thanks very much, Chris, for all of these insights. I really appreciate these updates today, and I'm sure hopefully the viewers will have done as well. Thank you for helping us make sense of everything at this critical time. If people out there want more information and to be able to follow up, where are they going to be able to get access to more of your work?
Yeah, sure. If they want to get some of our free research, get an idea of kind of what we do, and they can go to thetechnicaltraders.com. And then the top menu, there's a free research tab. We post a lot of trade ideas and a lot of thoughts of what's going to happen in the markets, where some critical levels are, where you can look to sell or buy or stand aside until the chaos happens, unfolds. So yeah, you can go there, and we have a paid newsletter for anyone who wants trade alerts and a pre-market video that kind of walks you through what to expect today. And you get any trades that we put on as well. So pretty straightforward.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. I think it's just a really helpful update. There's a lot that you covered there, which I wasn't aware of. So I think I'm going to have to watch it back just with a notepad.
I know it's really interesting because in the last week, we saw some of the brokers like Interactive Brokers. They're one of the biggest. They're institutional and they're retail clients. I've used them for a decade. They increased their margin rates, meaning most people always buy more stock than their account can actually really safely hold. So when there is a pullback, they get shaken out of trades. Anyways, they tightened their margin requirements. And then the very next day when it was implemented, the stock market fell 2%. Wow. And other brokers are raising their margin rates, meaning people can't, if there's any selling here, we're going to see a huge wave of margin calls again. And it's not a good thing. If brokers are tightening on their margin, they see with their systems that there's big volatility selling coming. And then the Chicago Mercantile Exchange for futures, they actually widen their circuit breaker stops from, I think it was 5% to 7%, because they don't want the circuit breakers to get hit all the time, because every time a circuit breaker's hit, it creates panic. So they're actually making the circuit breakers bigger and wider and harder to hit, which is actually more deadly. It means the market has to fall more before it pauses. So, I mean, there's some chaos going to happen. The big institutions are positioning for some chaos. So it's going to be wild.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Well, thank you so much, Chris. We should perhaps arrange another catch-up maybe after the US election, if that's possible.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much indeed. And take care. All the very best.
Yeah, you too, Adam. Take care.